The Galactic Defense Academy's training hall buzzed with the chittering and clicking of 24 alien recruits. Evie stood at the front of the room, her arms crossed as she surveyed the newest batch of cadets. Beside her, a rack of wooden practice swords gleamed under the artificial lighting, simple, unadorned implements of earth oak. "These are your training weapons," Evie announced, her voice cutting through the noise. The chittering grew louder, morphing into what could only be described as laughter. A Vexian recruit, its crystalline body refracting light in prismatic patterns, stepped forward. "Instructor, with respect, these are wooden sticks. We have plasma training simulators, hard light constructs, neural feedback systems. Why would we train with primitive tools?" Evie's expression didn't change. She'd heard this before, from every graduating class since humans had joined the Galactic Defense Force 5 years ago. "Because, Cadet Zixthor, these primitive tools will teach you more about combat than any simulator ever could." A Krellian, its 6 arms gesturing dismissively, added its voice to the dissent. "Our species has been warriors for 10,000 years. We know 17 forms of combat. This is beneath us, is that so?" Edward's voice came from the doorway. The second human instructor strode into the room, his scarred hands and weathered face testament to countless hours of training. He moved with an economy of motion that the more perceptive aliens recognized immediately, the gait of a predator. "Then perhaps a demonstration is in order." Evie nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She and Edward had been partners for 3 years now, ever since they'd been recruited from Earth's Special Forces to help train the GDF's new human contingent. They'd developed this particular lesson into an art form. "Cadet Zixthor," Edward said, gesturing to the rack. "Take a weapon. Any weapon. Use your energy shields, your natural abilities, whatever you think will help." The Vexian's confidence was palpable as it selected a wooden sword, holding it awkwardly in its crystalline appendages. Its body began to glow with defensive energy, a shimmer that would deflect most standard projectiles. The other recruits backed away, forming a circle. Evie picked up her own wooden sword with practiced ease, the weight familiar in her hands. She rolled her shoulders once, then settled into a ready stance, feet shoulder-width apart, sword held in a middle guard. "Begin when ready," Edward called out. Zixthor charged immediately, its alien physiology allowing for incredible speed. The wooden sword came down in a powerful overhead strike that would have crushed human bone. It struck nothing but air. Evie had sidestepped with minimal movement, her own sword already in motion. The wooden blade cracked against Zixthor's midsection with a sound like breaking glass. The Vexian's energy shield flickered but held. Before it could recover, Evie's sword tapped its neck, then its knee, then its weapon hand, 3 strikes in less than 2 seconds. "Dead. Dead, disarmed," Evie said calmly, stepping back. The Vexian stood frozen, its crystalline form dimming in what might have been embarrassment. "Who's next?" Edward asked, though his tone made it clear it wasn't really a question. The Krellian with 6 arms stepped forward, confident in its multiple appendages. It took 4 swords. Edward faced this one himself. The Krellian was a blur of motion, all 6 swords creating a web of wooden blades that should have been impossible to penetrate. Edward didn't try to penetrate it. He waited patient, his sword held loosely. Then, with a movement so economical it barely seemed like movement at all, he stepped inside the Krellian's guard. His sword traced a line across the alien's throat, gentle enough not to harm but clear in its intent. "Dead," he said simply. One by one, the recruits tried and failed. Some lasted longer than others. A few showed promise, but none could touch either human instructor. The wooden swords moved with a precision that made them more dangerous than any energy weapon, guided by years of training and an understanding of combat that went beyond technology. Finally, when the last recruit had been gently humbled, Evie and Edward stood together in the center of the hall. The aliens watched in silence now, their earlier mockery forgotten. "You want to know why we use wooden swords?" Evie asked, holding up her practice weapon. "Because this teaches you truth. A plasma simulator can be reset. A hard light construct disappears when deactivated. But this..." She struck the blade against her palm with a sharp crack. "This teaches consequence. Every strike matters. Every mistake hurts. Every victory is earned." Edward continued. "Your species have been warriors for millennia." "That's impressive. Humans have been warriors for just as long. But we learned something your advanced civilizations forgot in your rush to technology. The fundamentals never change. Distance, timing, pressure, commitment. These things don't require energy shields or plasma weapons. They require discipline, practice, and humility. He walked to the rack and selected 2 swords, tossing one to Evie. Without a word, they began to spar. The room fell silent except for the rhythmic clacking of wood on wood. The aliens watched as the 2 humans moved through forms that were simultaneously beautiful and brutal. Attacks that flowed into defenses, parries that became strikes, footwork that made the complex look simple. They weren't showing off. They were showing the truth. That mastery of the basics created something transcendent. When they finished, neither was breathing hard. Edward turned to the recruits. The wooden sword is not primitive. It's essential. It strips away all the advantages your technology gives you and forces you to confront the warrior within. Some of you have natural armor. Some have energy shields. Some have superior strength or speed. But none of that matters if you don't understand the fundamental grammar of combat. Evie nodded toward the racks. These swords will be your constant companions for the next 6 months. You'll curse them. You'll hate them. You'll get bruises in places you didn't know could bruise. But at the end, you'll understand why every human soldier, from the lowliest recruit to the highest general, still trains with these primitive weapons. The Vexian Zixthor stepped forward again. Its crystalline form had lost its earlier arrogance. Instructor, would you teach us? Properly? Evie smiled, this time warmly. That's why we're here, cadet. Pick up your sword. Let's begin with stance. Edward, take half the class. We'll start with the basics. As the recruits spread out, wooden swords in hand and newfound respect in their bearing, Edward caught Evie's eye and nodded. Another class learned. Another group of aliens discovering what humans had known for millennia, that the simplest tools, in skilled hands, were often the most deadly. The clacking of wooden swords filled the training hall, a sound as old as human civilization itself, now echoing through the stars, a reminder that sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. And in the Galactic Defense Force, where humans had proven themselves time and again against impossible odds, the wooden practice sword had become a symbol, not of primitiveness, but of the deadly elegance that came from true mastery.